Okay, do a video here. I'm doing some spar urethane, which is it's basically it's the same as um, polyurethane for the most part, but this is just kind of better stuff. This is indoor outdoor. It withstands a lot of sun and rain, moisture and whatnot, and temperatures, as you can see. Um, it's just a good product, as you can see, spar urethane. It's a little expensive. The gallon of it is, I think it was like $50 at Home Depot. Okay, should always put it in a cup so that, sorry, let me turn off TV here. Watch Chuck Norris here. You should always put it in a separate cup because you don't want to contaminate the rest of the container. If you have any problems, if it touches something it's not supposed to, you don't want to put it in there. I already put a swipe on here, but basically what you want to do is you want to get the bristles pretty wet, and obviously get the extra off. But basically you can see it's heavier down here than it is here, and as you work it, as you can see just by doing this, I'm like actually pushing it out. Okay, so what happens is as you drag it along, you're actually pulling it out. So in order to not get a huge drip on the side, what I usually do is I start here. Okay, now the other thing is, do not shake urethane. Okay, you always stir it. You do not want to incorporate air. Okay, now as you can see, there's a little bit of bubbles here. Okay, unfortunately my camera doesn't go any closer, but you can see the bubbles there. So what I do is I put most of it there, and then I start. Okay, and all I want to do is just get it started where everything's nice and wet. Okay, and then once it is, you want to put it down and you want to drag it. Okay, and no matter how much you want to go back and touch something you missed, you don't. Go all the way to the end. And the idea of this is to keep the air out of it. But also what you're doing is almost like you're massaging all the air and sand out of it. Polyurethane has sand in it. And if you put it on too thick, as you can see the grains of sand. Okay, so basically what you're doing is, by going nice and slow, alright, so now I'm all the way down to here, but I moved up because I want to get, as I'm pushing through, the brush is leaving behind a little strand. Okay, so I want to make sure I come back and get that. So this swipe is more to make everything uniform. Bring it all the way to the end. Now I want to go nice and slow so that all the way on the end it gets moisture with the poly. Okay, now here it's a little bit thick. I could go and spread that out, but there's not really any sense in that because I'm going to come behind. Now normally you'd overlap a little bit. Okay, so sometimes what I like to do is you still have to do nice strokes, but as you can see it's leaving behind a line. So what I like to do is kind of just bring it down a little bit slow, but not too slow, and just go down and don't worry about what I missed, but just kind of cover most of it. Okay, and now there's a line of poly here, of urethane here, and then over here there's spots that are missing, spots that have it. So now if I come back to that spot and I drag slowly, and as you see I have kind of a very slight angle so that most of my drip's going to come down to the bottom, not to the top. Okay, so I want to spread it out nicely, and the slower you go, the easier it is to fill in all those cracks. No matter how fast you want to go, you have to go slow. I recommend having a table that's a little higher off the ground because I'm trying to bend over to do this. It's not too good on my back. But as you can see, gotta go all the way down with it. Okay, and just keep doing that all the way down. All right, just a little bit on the brush. I mean, you know, saturated, but you don't want it dripping. Give it a start. soft so you don't let all the air in. You do not want to brush back and forth. No matter how much you want to, do not brush back and forth. This is not paint. Now as I'm starting to get further, there's less and less in the brush. If I go slow, and what happens is there's an opportunity for all of it to come down the bristles. And that way everything is saturated. So now, everything is saturated nicely all the way down. Okay, so now when I back up a little bit, I make my second pass, it's going to kind of just make it a little bit thicker all the way through. Okay, down here, spread this out a little bit. I don't want there to be too much. Although it seems like the more you put on, the easier it's going to be. When it dries, you will see puddles and drip marks and all kinds of imperfections. You don't want to see that, so you want to make sure you go all the way down. Okay, and once you start, even if you're just trying to get a little spot, you got to go all the way down with it. Okay, now I was really just getting a spot, so it doesn't matter if I go a little faster. Okay, so that's basically how it's done. Okay, now when I'm done, I like to go through with a dry rag, clean rag, and I go through and I wipe the edges. I don't mind if I'm sorry, I keep saying poly, but if urethane gets on here, but I don't want it all dripping on the bottom. It creates, you know, all kinds of gunk and everything and makes a big mess. Now this stuff, you should wear respirators or some kind of breathing mask, because this stuff actually, it will cause brain damage. It says it right on the container eventually, over, you know, prolonged exposure, so don't breathe it in on purpose. Make sure you're in a ventilated area. And then once the first coat is done, it has to dry at least 4 hours, but personally I recommend 5. And then once you do, you wet sand it down with at least 220 grit sandpaper. I like to use wet dry. I like to wet sand it, and I like to, sometimes I go all the way up to 400, but it really depends on what I have laying around. But at the very least 220 grit, and then once you've done that, then you wipe it down, maybe some mineral spirits or even just some clean water and rag. And then you put the second coat on the same way. When you're done with the second coat, do not sand it. Only sand the first coat. If you're going to do a third coat, then you can sand the second one. So if you have any questions, comments, anything, just let me know. As you can see, right now the brush marks are still in here a little bit. Okay, these are some that I already put the first coat on, and as you can see, soaks in a little bit. You can see that if I had left too much on, this is only a first coat, you would have seen puddles. So this is a first coat. Alright, so thanks for watching. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Subscribe, like, all that jazz. Thank you.